All right, we're back at the Nerd Rage Series Online Open. I'm joined by Tannon Grace, and we're going to be moving into round 3 momentarily, where we're going to see the Blue-Black Ninjas deck that we didn't get to see, that we teased you with last round, versus Blue-Black Death Shadow. So Blue-Black, but not really a mirror.
Not at all. So we kind of buried the lead a little bit here last round. We waxed poetically for a while about the Ninja deck and how much excited we were to see it in action. So hopefully we're finally going to get to see that. I'm excited as well. The opponent is going to be playing Blue-Black Shadow. This was a deck that was kind of always on the fringe, and here we have it up on the screen. It was kind of always on the fringe of Legacy for a while, right? Like I remember playing against this deck like 7 or 8 years ago. Some newer cards have been added to it. There's some cool stuff going on here, but this really burst onto the scene at PT 25, the Team Pro Tour that had Legacy. I was very happy and fortunate to be able to compete in that event because getting to play Legacy on the Pro Tour was a lifelong dream of mine. Like playing Legacy,
did fairly well too.
Yeah, I did all right. We did all right. I was about to say very lucky to have amazing teammates as well in that. And Joe, you actually helped me out a ton with that. You were my actual one of my main testing partners. So thanks again for all that. But this is one of the decks. I remember you and I talking about this. This deck, there were whispers of it going into the tournament, right? And I kept trying to mess around with it, and we were close. We hadn't figured out Reanimate yet, and that was the card that really broke this deck. They got this deck really, really good. And this version, really interesting to me. The thing that kind of stands out, there's no Gurmag Angler in it. It's something I'm kind of surprised to not see, but it makes sense. There's some newer cards here. We see Brazen Borrower getting added. A card that's just very versatile and good in the format. Is another blue threat that can be pitched to Force of Will. It answers stuff like Merit Lage and stuff main deck, which is a big deal. These decks don't normally have that kind of effect, but this deck plays out a lot like a Delver deck in the fact that it's kind of like a blue tempo deck. It's trying to disrupt you earlier, but it's a little more proactive in what it's doing. Cards like Thoughtseize taking away cards like that. Another new card in here, Drown of the Lock, really versatile counterspell / removal spell, really good here. Snuff Out is a card that you can pay 4 life for to get a free spell here, which, as you see, this deck, we're only playing a couple Underground Seas. There's 3 of them in here, but we're also playing Watery Grave. Actual factual Watery Grave, because this is a masochistic deck. You are trying to do damage to yourself to get a Death Shadow into play as quickly as possible. And generally, you're going to be seeing them on turn 2 if they're in the opening hand. And that card gets out of hand quite a bit. So the biggest thing with Delver for me, always playing these decks, is your deck is amazing when you have Delver on turn 1, right? Like it's one of the best, if not the best, 1-drop threat of all time. You couldn't pair it with another one in the colors that you were in. When you had DRS, that was good. When you had Death Ray Chomp, it was good. But when that got banned, you don't really have that other 1-drop. And while Death Shadow is not a 1-drop, it does a very good impression of them further down the line. The fact that you can kind of play it on turn 2, play another spell, still have up Daze, still have up Force of Will, and do those kinds of things. So big fan of this deck. This deck really shines when combo decks and stuff are really good in the format, and it's also got a pretty decent Delver matchup. It's very player dependent to see who's going to win that. So I'm very excited to see this one today.
Yeah, and so we have the Blue-Black Shadow playing against the Ninja deck that we saw earlier. We'll pop that back up again for those of you that are just joining in. So again, we have 1-drops on both sides. We have actually Brazen Borrowers on both sides, which is surprising, maybe, the fact that given that we're playing Legacy. We have, free counter magic on both sides, cheap removal, but really the Death Shadow deck is going to be powering out bigger threats, and the Ninja's deck has more inherent card advantage. So that's maybe what's going to set the two sides apart, and we'll see. I don't really want to call a favorite here. I don't know how exactly this is going to play out.
I gotta say, I think Shadow's going to be a tiny bit favorite because I think it's a little more linear of a deck. Okay. We're going to be watching from the Shadow perspective. One thing that I'm going to be looking for here is if Yukiro can steal a game.
Right. Sure.
The trigger from Yukiro can deal tons of damage really fast. If you do something like Brainstorm and make sure a Force of Will or something's on top of your deck, because the Shadow deck, you don't generally have to do too much damage to them. They're going to be doing a lot themselves. They're probably going to be taking 10 to 12 damage, if not more, in some games to themselves. So.
Yeah, it's in the in Modern, where Death Shadow is a more common deck, playing against Burn, and it's kind of the balance of, do you change the pace of your play and your choices based on the fact that your opponent's going to be helping you do some of the damage yourself. That's kind of maybe somewhat taken into account here also, because as we see the Shadow deck choosing which card to put back on the mulligan, is with their deck doing somewhat aggressive, do we play a little bit slower, fetch undergrounds or fetch tap lands instead of Watery Graves because the damage is going to accumulate regardless of whether we do it ourselves. And we see, actually, I believe we went to 5 cards on the other side.
You make a really good point, and I think it's a big thing. I think it's one of the biggest skill tests of Shadow is how you pace the games. And I played a lot of Shadow in Modern. I played a decent bit of Shadow in Legacy, trying it out. It was one of the biggest. A lot of times when I would lose to a deck, like when this deck got really popular, I lost to it quite a bit. I got a couple famous some watched matches. This is one of the ones that kept me from winning a trophy. I lost to it multiple times in that tournament on camera.
Well, and then I got to the point though. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then I got to the point where I'm beating the deck more often than losing to it now. But what helped me the most with that is I played with the deck myself, to try to get a better understanding. And this is a really punishing start against a mulligan.
Yeah, so we have 5 cards versus 6 with the 6 card player going first. So that'll even up slightly. But yeah, neither deck's probably going to be functioning too well here. We see on the Ninja side, we have a Ninja's Infiltrator and no Enabler, no cheap creature to dump it in off of, plus a couple cantrips. And on the Death Shadow side, we have a couple Dazes and a Wasteland, but no threats. So neither side is going to be putting a threat into play unless it comes off the top in the first several turns of the game here.
What would you have taken with that Thoughtseize?
So we took Infiltrator, leaving a Ponder, Brainstorm, and a couple land. Well, without a removal spell, I guess I can support taking the Infiltrator. I mean, I wouldn't have minded taking a cantrip. Maybe the idea is we'll take the Infiltrator and we'll daze the cantrips.
So here's the thing. I think there's a good argument to say that you want to take something like Ponder or Brainstorm there if you didn't have Reanimate in your hand.
Okay, so chat, I just glanced at the chat, and chat is 100% correct, and I would have missed this. The Infiltrator was chosen probably with the intention of reanimating it.
And also, here's the thing. I don't think you have to daze this. While your dazes might not have a lot of stuff in the future, like, a lot of value, you can, because it allows you to deal more damage to yourself, right? You're going to be to the point where after you reanimate on this turn, you're going to be taking, a ton of damage, 2 from the land, more from the reanimate. You don't have to daze here. I don't think, if there was a wastelandable land on the other side of the board, I definitely would not daze, but it's just a spot where this Changeling, there's no Ninja on the other side of the board yet. The problem is there's 2 cantrips in their hand, but they're probably not going to be able to cantrip plus do a Ninja next turn. So you're going to be pretty far ahead here. So while these plays weren't exactly intuitive, I think the plays have been very good from the Shadow side. So
this is the only copy of Reanimate in the deck, and I was actually surprised to see just the one. But this Thoughtseize Reanimate is a really big combo that plays well together. I played a little bit of a few years ago of actual Reanimator in Legacy, and that was a matchup where I also, like with Thoughtseize Reanimate, that's a big thing you're looking for sometimes if your own deck isn't providing with exactly what you want. And we see here the Infiltrator on the wrong side of the board as far as the Ninja player is concerned. And barring a Brazen Borrower, this is going to be quite a nuisance as the Ninja deck doesn't block especially well.
It's pretty funny. We were talking about it's the mirror match of blue-black decks. It's now just a mirror match, right? Like they're now just ninjas on both sides of the board. So we're just getting the best of both worlds here. Absolutely love it. This Brainstorm needs to be really, really good to get the Ninja player back in here, and maybe the Changeling outclass start getting something done. But the fact that you almost can't take too many attacks from this Infiltrator here, because if the Shadow player starts accruing actual card advantage as well as getting super far ahead on all their plays, it's going to be hard for you to win from here. Yeah, and I agree with not dazing here, because now that we have the Infiltrator on the board, I think we want to maintain our life total now, as the way the board currently looks, the Shadow player is going to accrue advantage every single turn. So we want the game to not accelerate. We want it to be slow. So we'll just trade 2 for 2, draw a card every time, and hopefully, and probably predictably, the card advantage should be enough. Now, drawing 3 copies of Daze is really not what we want from this side, and a Snuff Out is not really great either. What we're looking for is a Shadow. We're looking for any creature, really. Yeah, Snuff Out is an interesting one in this matchup because most of the creatures in the opposing deck are black. Yeah. Even the blue ones are also black. So it's going to be a weird one to see if it's taken out of the deck or not, because it does deal with, like, it can hit Ornithopter, right? It doesn't say non-artifact. It's not terror. I believe you're correct. It's non-black. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's just non-black. So I couldn't remember if it was terror or not, if it could hit an artifact creature or whatever. But So this is an interesting one in this matchup. While this card's usually very good in matchups like this, creature matchups, this is gonna be one of the ones where it doesn't shine, doesn't stand out. And I like what you said about not dazing, because you kind of want to protect your life total as much as possible here, because there was a chance that you were casting this Thought Seeds as well.
Yeah.
These infiltrators can't be blocked, right? I'm sorry, these outcasts can't be blocked. The infiltrators on the shadow side, and this damage could add up real quickly, and you don't want to get to a situation where you're just going to die from getting pecked to death by these 1/1s.
Yeah, I think it's very possible we end up in a situation here where the shadow player is way ahead on cards and loses the game because there's just the life total got away from it, and there's no way to reel it back. I mean, you look at the hand right now. We have 3 more cards than the opponent, and we have no effective cards.
And here comes a ninja.
Okay, it's an infiltrator. If that was a Yuriko, which I believe. I think the Yuriko trigger is also 2 mana, but I'm not 100%.
It is. It's just blue and black. Yeah.
Yeah. So this will come down. Now we're going to take 3 damage, and actually, I keep confusing myself. Not the shadow player. The ninja player is going to draw 2 cards this time, and so now the card advantage and the life total is going to be skewing towards the ninja side, and Death Shadow is in some serious trouble.
Oh, absolutely, and. I mean, if you looked at these opening hands along the Thoughtseize into the reanimate, you would think Shadow is super far ahead, and they were. The Ninja player is drawn well from here, so you're really seeing the power of cards like Ponder and Brainstorm, which is not something we really have to convince you of.
Mm-hmm.
And you're definitely going to see the days happen here.
Yeah.
Let's say we can just actual factual hardcast days.
Yeah, and these basic lands are proving useful. Which in my experience they commonly do. But okay, we see days back. Now, do we fight over this?
This was, I was going to say, this is something that could be talked about possibly, why you were just hard cast days here. But I think since you have so many of them, you just do it this way. You kind of get to free roll this,
Yeah. I mean,
and, we alluded to it before the show. If Wasteland is a relevant card, it's very, very good in the format. We've seen a lot of people over the last year or two kind of mitigate the damage that Wasteland. I just remember when I was playing Delver a lot when I was younger, Wasteland was just one of the best cards, period. Mm-hmm. Nowadays it can be a liability in your deck when your opponent has so many basics, especially open deck lists and stuff now. Mm-hmm. They know that you're a Wasteland deck before they even see your first play. So
yeah. So now can we even attack here? I'm not sure that we can. We might just have to hold back and block the other infiltrator. That's
not even good though, is it? No. Like that's the problem is Changeling is unblockable.
Yeah. No, that one's going to get through anyway. But yeah, I mean, we can't, there's already options we can't Watery Grave into Thoughtseize and attack because we're dead on the board. So obviously that's out. And this is going to be, I'm not sure what, do you attack just because you need something?
So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't here. I think the situation is insanely hard to figure out because the problem is if you draw a spell you want to cast, you have to take 2, right? Like you have to place Watery Grave untapped. Like you can't draw a land that does little damage to you plus the Watery Grave, and do stuff like that as well. So I think the 4th days.
What I've been potentially interested in is playing Watery Grave tapped, sitting back,
right,
blocking the infiltrator, then next turn attacking, and trying to hit another land. Hopefully,
the problem with that play is if you don't attack with your infiltrator, they might not attack with theirs. Because they don't have to attack the infiltrator, they can just attack with the outcast.
Yeah, that's true.
And then now your infiltrator no longer can connect and get you a card.
Yeah.
So at that point, you have to think about, do I need to get a card deeper into my deck to have a chance in this game? And the answer is probably yes, which means the attack is probably correct. It's one of those plays. This happens a lot with Delverish decks. It happens a lot in Magic where you make plays where, yes, this is Legacy. Somebody in the chat's making a joke. This is Legacy, right? Yes, this is Legacy. There's a lot of games in Magic where you'll look at your opening hand and you're like, well, I have to keep the 7, but I'm going to lose. Or I have to make these plays, but I'm probably going to lose. And, it's those damned if you do, damned if you don't situations. And I got to shy on the side of, I think attacking is correct. I think you win the game more often from there instead of not losing as often. And I like playing to try to win.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like we deny both players a card and we conserve 2 life points, which seem very precious to me right now.
Yeah, I think denying yourself a card there might be denying yourself a chance to win. So I'm not sure. I'd have to really sit there and think about the situation because I think playing defensively is probably not going to win you the game, but maybe it's correct. I'm not sure because the thing is what removal spells are left? Do we have fatal pushes in the on the shadow side that can't even kill an infiltrator?
I mean, we have Drown Lock. The Drown Lock is live, ready to go. We just need the land to be able to cast it.
And most of the lands
Hey, there we go.
Underground Sea is a big draw here.
Yeah. All right, so this has got to be Underground Sea drawing the lock on the Infiltrator and hope it doesn't get countered by a force.
Well, you have 2 dazes, so you can do it during their turn and hope it's good. Maybe they'll main phase 1 or try to ninjutsu or something. I think you have to do it like in combat after blockers.
Well,
most likely.
Well, in combat after blockers, then we just get
blown out by ninjutsu as well. Yeah, God, I'm not sure. I was gonna say, when do you time this?
That I don't know, but I don't think that's it because then you just
you're right.
Eat another ninja anyway.
I might be correct to do it here.
I think you do it now.
Yeah.
I think you do it now. There's one less blue card in there. We know there's a brainstorm anyway, so but at least it's not castable. I think you crank it now and hope.
Yeah. I mean, you're still not in a great spot, but you're at least alleviating some of the problems.
Yeah. I mean, if this goes through and there's not a follow-up ninja, okay, then things look possible. They're very far from being good, but...
All right, well, step 1 was Drown Block resolving, and we've got that. We're past that. Looks like we're going to put some tax on the mana for the Ginger Brute over here. You know what? I got to say this. I love when people's screen names really fit the type of deck they're playing. Mm-hmm. And if your name is the Ginger Brute, you're playing something with Changeling Outcast in your deck. You're definitely playing... the 1 mana 1/1s that can't be blocked.
That's a tell, huh? Like if they're hidden deck lists, you think that would you're giving away too much information by that name?
They're playing goblins, they're playing ninjas, they're playing something along the lines of this. I mean, if you're naming yourself the Ginger Brute, I'm gonna laugh. So someone's gonna play against me. They're gonna have a name like the Ginger Brute, and they're gonna play a Tundra on turn 1 or something like that.
So I said I went over the last Magic Online update, the Legacy Decklist update in preparation for this, and one of the players. I don't remember the second part of the name. It was something like Devoid Guy. And Devoid Guy 5-0'd with Eldrazi.
Yeah, big surprise.
So, yeah, in some cases, you were absolutely right on how that's going to work. So, we saw the double days just to eat up the mana for the turn. The Brainstorm comes out, but nothing's going to be contributed to the board from the Ninja side. So, this is going to buy at least a little bit of time for a recovery. I mean, I don't think we feel good about it, but it looks better now than it did a turn ago. I was going
to say, there's nothing like Lightning Bolt that's going to end the game. I don't know where you're still worried about something like Yukaro, but like at this point, you can't really play around that stuff. You can't really, take the time. A Death Shadow really needed to come off the top there. Well, we need something that was going to end the game next turn.
Yeah, we got another draw for the turn. Excuse me. So, I mean, hopefully, but yeah, we continue to draw a disruption that is really not cutting it. Thoughts castable. Okay. So now I presumably will go Underground Sea Ponder, and that'll be the turn, and maybe we'll live, maybe we won't.
I was say pretty much any ninjutsu card ends the game. And the fact that it just makes it unreachable from this point, I think you have to shuffle this.
Yeah, I agree. I think you do too.
You just have to find a shadow and hope it's good for the next 2 turns. Because that's always another spot too, where you're playing against the shadow decks is like, do I attack in certain spots too? There's definitely some spots where you're supposed to not attack and wait for a turn if you have stuff to develop. You know what I mean? If you're not, I need to race them anyway. But if you're in the spot where, I just need a turn or 2 to develop more, and I can try to kill them in 1 attack. Because you don't want to make it to where, you've put them to 3 now, so now their shadow is an 8/8 or a 9/9. It's big enough to kill you in 1 attack, so the game is going to be really weird from that spot on.
Mm. And I have to say here, I cannot believe that we're going to keep this set of cards. I don't want to be too critical, and I think that's a problem I have as a commentator, but I do not understand this.
As I say, there was no way to answer the Changeling Outcast in these cards as well, right?
Right. I wonder if, because of the dazes that happened, I wonder if we forgot that we already played a land for the turn.
I think it's a big possibility. Yeah,
I think that would make sense to me based on the choice of actions here, because we stacked the Ponder so that the Devil would flip. I think that's what happened, and in which case, I understand that. Like it's something that you can do. Games get complicated, land drops that get missed or not, but effectively missed by wastelands or dazes can mess up your understanding of the game state. And so I think what we just saw here was an error that's going to take a game that was looking bad and put it completely out of reach. And it was probably not a misreading of the board. It was a just not understanding of where you were as far as what you could deploy this turn. But it is going to end the game, I think.
I think Ninja's going to win this tournament, Joe. After seeing what they beat the first couple of rounds, and then what's happened this game, this mulligan to 5,
right.
Get thought seized on 1, your opponent reanimates your infiltrator, like worst case scenario, and you're still coming out of this.
Yeah,
I mean, not only playing well, not only running well, their opponents aren't drawing very well. It's going to be hard to beat this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a nice recovery, and now we have an answer to sorcery speed removal, and okay.
I was gonna say, lots of cool stuff going on here. I gotta appreciate playing from the shadow side here, because pretty much the exact same things are going on that would happen to me. Is every time a card like Retrofitter Foundry hits the stack or these infiltrators, I would have to make the card a little bit bigger myself and reread them to refamiliarize myself with these cards, because I haven't seen them since I saw them on the spoiler.
Right.
So
this Retrofitter Foundry can for a mana turn a Changeling Outcast into a 4/4 flyer. I'm sorry, that's not even correct. It doesn't cost a mana to do that, to that phase of it. It's the third ability on the card. No, I'm wrong again. It's the fourth ability on the card. Is sacrifice a Thopter, which Changeling Outcast technically is, because it's everything, and create a 4/4 construct token.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I bungled that reading of the card, despite already knowing what it did, because, some of these cards have a lot of text, and they're complicated, and more importantly, we don't see them played very often.
Joe, the only person who understands how that card works are the people who are playing it.
Yeah, and that's not fair at all. They should have to, bring a little explanation guide for their opponents. It's like, here's my deck list, and here is reminder text on what my cards actually function as, so you can have a chance in the matchup. Anyway, we move into the sideboarding here. From the shadow side, we're going to want removal. Anything we have that kills little stuff, and I think we're going to find some.
Yeah, there's some really good tools here on the shadow side. While I do think Baleful Strix is a card that you might want to look into and lean into, it's a card advantage engine. It's another way to trade for, something kind of stymie of what's going on from the Ninja side, because it can also block Ornithopter. I never thought I'd be saying those words, bringing in Baleful Strix to kind of stop Ornithopter, but important there. Liliana the Last Hope, another card that's pretty big here, can kill a lot of the little pesky stuff in the Ninja deck. And then the big hammer that I think is going to be a big card for this matchup, Plague Engineer. A card that, when Modern Horizons came out, this card kind of actually started dominating Legacy quite a bit. They were, control decks built around this. It made people change the way in which they won games of Legacy. We saw a lot of True Name Nemesis before this card, and now we don't see that card at all. That card just does not exist anymore in the format. But Plague Engineer here, naming Ninja, which I don't know if has ever happened in the history of Magic, might happen in this matchup and be very, very big.
Yeah, and boy, you're talking about Baleful Strix coming in to block Ornithopter being unlikely. How about Null Rod coming in to stop Retrofitter's Foundry? That probably hasn't happened too many times either.
I hadn't got down all the way to the bottom to Null Rod. I mean, Pithing Needle is something as well. I think Pithing Needle actually stops Ninjutsu, by the way, if I remember correctly. Let's say I've got to remember how Pithing Needle affects cards and hands, but I think that is something that can possibly happen. I know we've got a level 2 judge sitting near us right now, so I think they might be checking on that. Just big stuff here. I'm also wondering if maybe the card Island might come in here, and because here's the thing, you might want to take one of these. So Pithing Needle does stop Ninjutsu. Really, really cool. So that's something that could possibly happen here. I wonder if Island comes in while you're not, necessarily worried about your mana base. You might want to have more pain-free sources of mana in this matchup, because we were talking about this before, that Yukaro can win a game out of nowhere with its triggered ability of when a ninja hits, your ability to top card your library, they lose life, or I think it's take damage, whatever. You might want to protect your life total a little bit more in this matchup, because the Shadow deck is the control deck in this matchup. And so when that kind of stuff starts happening, when you're being attacked, Watery Grave becomes more of a liability in this matchup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, so I agree with you that the Island might come in to reduce damage, and I do think the Pithing Needle probably comes in because it can stop Ninjutsu or the Retrofitter Foundry, so probably better than the Null Rod because it does more than one thing. Maybe we'd see both, but I would say the Needle is more likely. I think you're right. So we see here an opening hand, and it has the Eliminate, and so I'm on board.
Yeah, I was going to say, another M21 card showing up quite a bit. And this one's a sweet one in this format. This is one that we talked about. It was going to be good in Pioneer, probably pretty decent in Modern. I didn't really think about the implications of it in Legacy, but now I am. And by the way, this is a really, really good Ponder. Yeah,
I was waiting for a moment there after you stopped talking about Eliminate, because yes, this Ponder is, ideal. There's no way we're shuffling it this away. This Delver is not going to flip, but who cares? This is great.
So are there thought seizes? I can't remember the exact list of the Ninja player. If they're all thought seizes, I really like the way they stacked the deck here, and the fact that the card that you want the most is furthest down, and the card that you want to protect the least is the one that went into your hand.
Right. No.
Because so there are 4 thought seizes in the Ninja deck, so you want to actually protect. So a lot of people, when they play stuff like Ponder or Brainstorm, they don't think about that kind of aspect. They're like, oh, these cards are great. Like, oh, I really want this Liliana. Let me just put the Liliana in my hand, right? Or whatever. Yeah. But you want to make sure that the way that it's stacked now, the Liliana will be the top deck for turn 3. So you're going to be playing it. It's never going to be in your hand and have a chance to be discarded from your opponent.
Right. And we have sort of protection from it as with Daze. So if the opponent taps out, then yeah, we have, it's going to be like, well, if we play the Strix here, that's, yeah, I mean, it's going to come to the hand, but already we probably didn't get Thoughtseize on turn 1. We're probably not going to get Thoughtseize on turn 2 either.
So here's one of the spots too that I talk about a lot is like Delver players and stuff. If your opponent plays a really good spell here, depending on what it is, it's going to be very hard for me to cast Daze here. You'd have to play something very, very powerful for me to use a Daze here, where I have to return land in my hand, because I want this Liliana to play next turn, and especially if they tap out or whatever, I want to make sure my Liliana resolves, and I want to make sure it gets protected. So 100% I would never Daze here anyway, but this is an ideal scenario where you're going to be able to play Liliana this turn, right? It's going to be able to kill this Baleful Strix, but if your opponent has a Daze or a Force of their own, this is a blowout.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really, really bad. This is just scripted together very well for the Death Shadow side. And even, I mean, Death Shadow is not involved in any of this, but it's...
We haven't even seen that card yet in any of the games.
That's true. But, okay, so there's a... We could conceal the Wasteland, but probably want to save the Flood Strength for a Brainstorm at some point. Or the Delver, but yeah.
Yeah, but they get the little scry effect from your Delver. I actually like not playing the Flooded Strand turn, and it seems like the Shadow players trying to figure out, like, they're thinking about this play, which I like. I think a lot of people kind of overlook what land to play here, and those little bitty incremental values are what, win you a lot of games of Legacy here. And I do think that it's correct to just play the Wasteland here. Your opponent has already shown that they have 2 basics in play, right? They're playing around Wasteland. It doesn't matter if you show them the card, and you get some incremental value of keeping Flooded Strand in your hand. Future Brainstorms. You get to scry with your Delver in play, and here's that kind of play line that we talked about. This is huge.
Yeah, Daze versus Daze. So we're going to need, from Ninjas, we're going to need a Force here, or things are going to look quite bad. Now, we do have to bounce. Let's see, we're bounce Underground or Watery Grave? It's Watery Grave.
It at least gives you the opportunity, right? Like, I actually like bouncing Watery Grave here with the intent of, I'll figure it out later.
Yeah. Right. No, you're right, because it doesn't look like we're necessarily going to need the untapped mana next turn, so we do have the choice. And the opposing Baleful Strix is picked off for free. Our Baleful Strix comes in for 1. Liliana's sitting there ready to get nasty with whatever else comes down. And yeah, this is a very strong position here.
I don't know if the game will go long enough, depending on what happens the next turn or two versus concessions, but we might see an ultimate of Liliana this game.
That could happen. We could get there. I mean, it's certainly going to be not easy to pressure, given that it defends itself in this matchup. It defends itself exceedingly well. And plus, we have the Eliminate and the Brazen Borrower. And
that was your opponent could have a Brazen Borrower of their own here. We saw that in their list. But here's a spot. We were kind of talking about Eliminate earlier. We didn't really get to finish the thought process. Here's a spot where that card kind of actually shines, right? Like, it's a removal spell for anything your opponent could be doing in this format. Usually, there's not many 4 drops or more, though we have seen quite a bit in this game. But you're seeing stuff like Liliana the Last Hope and Oko being very big and powerful in this matchup. And the fact that your creature removal spell also can kill that card, that's a big deal.
Yeah, no, it's very nice. So we're going to see here on the Brainstorm, it doesn't look like we're going to be shuffling anything away, but we stow the Wasteland for future use. And then I believe if we can, we're going to throw down Thoughtseize and Delver here with Daze backup and Delver flipping next turn. This is so good.
And now you're seeing the true power of the Shadow deck, right? When it works like this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's multiple Brazen Borrowers. Okay, so here's the thing. You have Brazen Borrowers to kind of deal with this Liliana. It's not really that good, right? You're going to bounce Liliana. That doesn't really do much, because if you put the Brazen Borrower into play, the Liliana is going to be able to kill it anyway. You're almost... Brazen Borrower does have Flash, so maybe you can get some attacks in. But you have the Eliminate and Dazes. This is a really bad spot all around.
Yeah.
Also, if you go to Brazen Borrower here and you get Dazed, that's the second copy of Brazen Bar going to the yard, because since the petty theft side of it doesn't resolve, it does not actually go to the adventure zone.
Yeah. So we may see it held off with the hope of bounce it at the end of next turn and then be able to play it the turn after that. But by that time, we're going to have taken a fair amount of damage. Are we actually going? Okay, we're going up.
Yeah. little beat downs.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've died to just Baleful Strix attacks and how demoralizing it is to just get attacked for 10 or 11 turns in a row.
I can't believe how good Brazen Borrower is. Mm-hmm. It's a card that, it looks useful. You compare it in Legacy, you compare it to Vendilion Clique very easily, and the balance effect actually it does come out here. I'll just table that thought for right now, as the Petty Theft half does come out, does get dazed. That is now both copies of Brazen Borrower in the deck have been expended, and this Liliana.
I don't think there's an out really to it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. The Python Needle Null Rod we're looking at were in the shadow side. So what is the Ninja deck going to do about this?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't remember the exact sideboard, so I'm not sure. But here's something you don't see every day: hardcasts.
Yeah. Given that you don't see the card in the first place ever, seeing a hardcast definitely doesn't happen. We do have it covered in multiple ways. Plus, even the Liliana activating on it will negate the effect.
By the way, is this the most unique ability in the history of Magic? I think it is. Commander Ninjutsu? Because I'm pretty sure it's the only time it's been printed on a card in Magic, right?
Yeah, we get confirmation from Max Con that yes, it is. And even if he hadn't said that, I would have agreed. I would have believed you if you told me that.
I don't know if there's an ability that's only on one card other than this. I probably have to rack my brain quite a bit. I was going to say Wizard Cycling came up. Apparently there's only one. Wait, is there more than one Wizard Cycling, or is there only just the one? All right.
So maybe there's a couple, but either way, this is certainly uncommon. We're going to see this eliminate. I don't even know that we necessarily need to do this.
Yeah, Liliana could have,
okay. So we're going down on Liliana. That's why we did that first, so that if it resolved, that if it didn't resolve, then we would have to plus Liliana. Since it didn't, we just basically convert 2 loyalty into a card. With Liliana, and that's a fine exchange at the current time. 3 loyalty, I suppose, because we went down instead of up 1. So we're kind of not thinking we're going to go towards the ultimate. We're thinking we'll just accrue a little bit of card advantage and just win on the board, which does seem like it's going to work.
Yeah, you don't need to ultimate Liliana to win here. You're dealing with almost perfect information. The kind of, you're dealing with practical perfect information, right? Besides a few cards they've drawn, but their hand, their deck, their sideboard. It's looking like it's going to be a rough spot for him to get out of this. I do like cycling here. If you hit yet another Daze, which we saw in game 1, the Shadow player is really good at drawing the card Daze. So playing for it's not a bad idea.
I would very much disagree with forcing this, though. The Liliana handles it on its own, right? It's -2, -1. So forcing this is unnecessary. I would be... I understand doing it, but I would be against it.
Yeah, you also have Petty Theft of your own to kind of if they were to attack Ninjutsu, you have Petty Theft as well there, and this card's not blocking the threats that you have in play. It's not threatening your Liliana, and like that. So I definitely think it's one of the spots where we can let this one go.
Yeah, and Brazen Borrower actually, as a threat, is actually worth something too, since we're attacking. Yeah, okay, and it does resolve. So this is good. We're definitely seeing this a couple times now from the Shadow player where some thought is put into these plays, and in this case, I think the correct decision was made.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, you're super far ahead. There's nothing wrong with playing a little faster, picking up your pace, making the plays kind of almost robotically, because you're just again, like I said, you're really far ahead here.
Yeah,
this is a game you're gonna have to mess up pretty bad to lose or get really unlucky to lose. There's nothing wrong with taking a couple extra seconds to make sure that your plays are tight. To make sure that you're doing the right thing in a couple of these spots, because in a lot of these spots, I try to figure out, how do I lose the game from here? What happens? And in one of those ways, it's probably, you using a force of will, expending another card from your hand, Brazen Bar, being no cards, drawing no action for the rest of the game, and your opponent drawing very well from there. And obviously, you don't even have to do anything here. I like just passing and leaving up force of will plus Brazen Bar for the rest of the game. Yeah,
and his Liliana last hope so far has picked off a Baleful Strix, drawn a card effectively, and then negated an Infiltrator, and then this next turn is probably going to pick off another. No, okay, we're going to counter this Baleful Strix.
This is another Force of Will I don't agree with. Your opponent's paying 2 mana to draw a card here, and I think I'm okay with just letting them do that. Though it does make maybe the Infiltrator better because you might have to use the Liliana onto the Baleful Strix, but you have a Brazen Bar in your hand to kind of help deal with whatever's going to happen here. So I think maybe we might have been a little hasty on the Force of Will there.
Yeah. Now this time we had to. So yeah, if we choose to let it resolve, we probably have to Liliana the Strix. So the Infiltrator is live, but you're right. We have Petty Theft to deal with it. We could have afforded to let that in, probably. We didn't. That's okay. But that was something where, we have the luxury of choices here, which, they feel like maybe one slightly better than the other, but they're kind of equivalent, and we're just winning. And
yeah. Another thing to be interesting here too is where you're supposed to attack a Baleful Strix this turn. Your opponent's at 9. It's a 3-turn clock, however you attack. And maybe you're supposed to leave back Baleful Strix to kind of not let Infiltrator attack just for free.
Perhaps. One thing that didn't occur to me right away, but now does, is that the Infiltrator, after being tagged by the Liliana, its attack actually still matters because it could get ninjutsu'd off of.
Yeah. I guess attacking for 4 is pretty big here. The fact that you can just cast Brazen Borrower and attack, but the thing is, if they're at 6, the Brazen Borrower still is lethal as well.
Like, what you said before was accurate. The Baleful Strix didn't change the clock because if the Brazen Borrower resolves, then they're dead anyway. So you're right about that. So we are going to go ahead and go to game 3 as Shadow does even up the match. And this one looked much more convincing than the game 1 going the other way. Although game 1 was a little raggedy with both players on mulligans.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the Ninja side. Maybe talk about their sideboard a little bit here. There we go. I'll just say, I was wondering when I looked at this originally, I've got to believe Liliana's Triumph is coming in. Just very good at answering giant shadows, which your deck doesn't have a ton of ways of doing. You have Fatal Push, but there's other targets for that as well. I wonder if you're ever supposed to bring in back to basics in this matchup, maybe on the play. We have seen, just nothing but non-basics out of the Shadow side. And this is a card that could just steal a game from your opponent. So it's one of those cards I go back and forth on.
Yeah, it's definitely true. As long as you can get through your turn of casting it without giving up too much board position, it's definitely a possibility. There are other options here. We have Fatal Push for cheap removal. I agree with you on the Liliana's Triumph. I don't know how much else we want. Maybe we want our third Brazen Bar. Okay, so I was wrong. I said there were 2 Brazen Borrowers. There are 2 in the main. There is a third in the board, which may or may not have come in. So there potentially was more of them to deal with the Planeswalkers, at least feed them off the board. But I feel like we really saw the power of Liliana, and eliminates from the Ninja side would be effective here too, but we don't see any.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a card, we talked about a little bit more. The more I'm thinking about it, man, I kind of want to find a deck that could play Eliminate in Legacy. It seems pretty good right now.
Being able to knock out Oko, Teferi, those kind of things, in addition to neither Reliquary or any number of creatures, is pretty nice. That's an appealing card.
Yeah, a card that can kill Termagoyf plus Oko plus Delver of Secrets. I'm thinking of cards like that aren't Red Blast. That don't deal with it, or that also deal with like Liliana. Like you said, or there's not a lot of cards that deal with all of those together. So it's pretty nice. I'm thinking of like, Abrupt Decay is a really good one too. But then we have to start playing another color, and that was another problem that we had with the Shadow deck. Is a lot of the times when we were building it and messing around with it, we were trying to play 3 colors because we wanted Abrupt Decay plus Berserk for green, and you didn't need it.
Sure. Okay, well, this is too bad. We have Retro Foundry coming down on turn 1, and on the other side of the board, we see the Python Needle. So that is not going to... Oh, okay, well, I can activate once. So even though it's going to get knocked out, we're going to get a 4/4 out of it. There is Fatal Push to deal with it. So, okay, strong hands here on both sides, probably. Narset is interesting. It shuts down the Infiltrator draw in addition to the cantrips. So that'll be... It won't stop Yuriko, I don't believe. But it will definitely do some work. Narset against any blue deck in Legacy can't be bad.
Yeah, I was going to say, Narset, it's one of those cards... It doesn't have the same effect that Liliana did in the last game, but it theoretically does, right? It's like this 3-mana Planeswalker that, if it sticks around, it does enough, it affects your opponent's stuff enough that you're going to garner so much advantage over those turns that it's going to be hard to lose the game from there. If there wasn't a fatal push in this opening hand, I would be worried about the shadow side of the stuff here. But this is gonna be another game where they're gonna have to protect their life total quite a bit because you do have the pithing needle to kind of deal with the foundry, but it looks like they're thinking about not playing the pithing needle on turn one. They're trying to decide if they want to play ponder or not. Which there's no island in play, so you're not worried about days. So are you worried about just exactly force of will from your opponent's 4-card hand?
Yeah, we talked one of the earlier rounds about how in Legacy, really early in the game, you can start already facing like tough decisions. We have 3 legitimate plays on turn 1 here. And we're going to choose to go with the needle probably on the foundry, but it's going to first convert into a 4/4. And because we sacrificed that, I'm going to say it's unlikely we have a ninja.
It looks like there is going to be a force of will here on turn 1. I got to believe that this foundry is number one thought in their mind for their plan for the rest of the game. If they're forcing here, if they're fighting over this, there's a lot of good. Maybe they don't have ninjas and they just have, I'll just say, this makes sense. Well, it kind of makes sense if you don't want to make both of these cards dead in your opening hand, but I don't know how well they do combined with each other.
Yeah,
I mean, if you don't have more mana, that's the problem. Is that there might not be enough mana on the side of the ninja player. Right. Yeah, it looks like they kept a 1-lander.
Yeah, this is. I didn't catch. Did you see? What did we pitch to the force? We pitched Brazen Bar. Okay, so that wouldn't have helped us in this point anyway. But this is. This looks quite bad for the ninja's side.
This is another really, really good ponder.
So Death Shadow is actually in the deck. This is the first time we've seen it.
Yeah, so Death Shadow is in the Death Shadow deck. We can confirm that now. I think this is an insanely good ponder. You have a threat here in Death Shadow. You have Plague Engineer to kind of shut down the rest of the deck. You have Baleful Strix that, so let's say something weird happens and your Fatal Push somehow doesn't resolve, like the other 2 cards are Force blue card. You have another answer to the Construct token here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, just love this turn for the Death Shadow player. I think the game might actually just be over now.
Yeah, I mean, this is tough. I mean, these Retro Foundries, it's free to convert into the 4/4, but everything else actually takes mana, and we just don't have any. When we get this picked off here, what do we have even? What are we doing with our 2 cards in hand? We're base case scenario. We have a ninja, which we don't have because otherwise we would have left the Ornithopter in play.
Now, there's one more thing to keep in mind up here. I was just informed by Max, our director and resident judge aficionado, that the Shadow player has only a little bit more than 3 minutes left on their clock here. Mm-hmm. And that is a way that they can lose this game. They need to try to win this game as quickly as possible from here. And I think you're going to see that over the next couple turns. They're going to start going really, really fast here. Because you can cast Baleful Strix here. Then you use Flood of Strand to take 3. You can't get Shadow into play just yet. But then you have another fetch land behind this. So you can start making a Shadow as big as possible. It looks like they might actually just go for the Narset here. I don't think I agree with playing Narset here, even though it's a clean, easy use of your 3 mana. I think with this low amount of clock, plus your opponent stumbling on mana, I want to get this game over with as quickly as possible.
And also, by activating the Narset, we're going to dump the Shadow that we actually probably want.
Yeah, I think they just realized that as well.
Yeah.
And that's why you're Plague Engineer.
So if it looks, for viewers, if it looks a little screwy since you see the clock for the Shadow player actually at 17:30 effectively, the reason is because we're playing with 25-minute clocks, but the default setting on Magic Online is 40. So if the player reaches 15 minutes, they have timed out of the game. So that's why that might look a little wrong to you. But yeah, we see on the other side 30 minutes on the clock. So effectively only 10 minutes used for the Ninja player.
There's also something else that I wanted to talk about last turn about. There's the chance that you weren't even supposed to Fatal Push the turn before, and since you knew that you had a Death Shadow, you were maybe supposed to just actually take 4 more damage.
Sure.
And be able to get your Death Shadow into play a turn quicker.
Okay.
In this game.
It's interesting. Okay, so we'll see. We'll get to the here. This fetch land felt like it could have been used the turn before. So another minor thing that's being pointed out to us by our judge, Max, is that since the Plague Engineer named Bird, it will actually kill the Baleful Strix, which is maybe why we didn't see it last. No, that wouldn't make any sense. I got played instead of it last turn. Oh, okay. There may have been a little bit of a hiccup there in the sequencing the patterns from the Death Shadow side, but we need to make our decisions fairly quickly here.
And I honestly kind of just like taking Force of Will here. You have a Baleful Strix in your hand that, yeah, you have Force of Will here, and you have a blue card in your hand that is now stranded, kind of. While you can still cast Baleful Strix and garner the card off of it, the body being attached to it is kind of what makes that card good, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to get a little... even when there was 3 minutes left, I had absolute confidence that this game would finish out no problem for the Death Shadow side. I am not confident at all of that anymore.
Also, I'm kind of remembering this. Plague Engineer is not symmetrical, right? It's not engineered plague. It's just your opponents, right? So you can still play the Baleful Strix and have it live. Right, it is. It's been a while for me. I apologize. I'm a little slow sometimes, guys.
Yeah, so that didn't actually apply to the Baleful Strix issue. But we need to fetch double Watery Grave. We need to get creatures on the board. We need to do it now.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think this is going to be really awkward because it's happening in about 30-something seconds. I don't know if this player is actually aware of the clock situation since there's a number, because this is an awkward situation in tournaments, right? Where
I don't think there's any way. I think you're right. I don't think there's any chance that this player realizes that they're running out of time. And this is something that it's unfortunate when you see it happen on a covered match that looks like it's interesting, especially when that player is losing, it looks like they're winning. But it is something that is a part of the game. It is something that you do need to keep track of, and giving yourself enough time to manage everything that's going on is something that's just a responsibility as a player. And unfortunately, it looks like it's going to cost this match.
Yeah, this is unfortunate, but like you said, this is something that is necessary. We have to have this in this. Otherwise, we're going to have like 4-hour rounds.
Yeah.
People play things like, Doomsday and these decks that have like ridiculous click-through combos without any repercussions for playing something that takes up and eats up a ton of the clock. Because it's just like real-life Magic. You have, 50 minutes to finish your round,
Yeah. Yeah. And this actually looks the result looks more in question now than it did before, with the second land having been achieved. Like those Death Shadows aren't going to hit. There are now blockers. And yeah, so we'll go ahead and bring it back. And so that, unfortunately, time did decide that round, but it is something that does happen. And if you're not cognizant of it, it's easy to let it slip away.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing. I won't cast the first stone here because I time out quite a bit with Magic Online from unfamiliarity, for taking too long. I definitely have times where I feel like I'm not concentrating as much on my match as I would in person, because it's easier if you and I are playing, right, and we're sitting across from each other at a table. I am very intently focused on what's going on in my match.
Yeah.
When I'm on a computer screen, I have one of the dual monitor setups. I've got, YouTube on the other screen. I've got Twitch up on the other screen. I've got all kinds of music going on. I'm distracted quite a bit. And so it's easy to get in the situation. Plus, Magic is very difficult. And that matchup is very difficult. They had to read a lot of their opponent's cards and stuff like that too. So this is a situation that it's unfortunate, but it does come up.
Yeah. And it is possible, like I was alluding to before, it is possible that the game was not over. Like the Ninja side conceivably could have dug their way out, even though it wasn't looking too good. But yeah, timing happens. Like I came back in, like I said, I played a league a couple days ago with my Legends deck. The first match of the league, I won with 7 seconds on the clock, in 2 games, and it was just. And then my second match, my opponent timed out, and it's like, yeah, that's something that, like, if you're not, up on it, if you're not paying attention, if you're like you can be distracted by YouTube, be on the phone, doing whatever you're doing, but it's your responsibility to keep. That's your choice. It's not, it's not on your opponent to. And we're playing, like, if we're playing a paper tournament here, things are different, obviously, when things run out of time, as both players get the same result. But it is something that creates a lot of angst, especially as someone who's played with a lot of Divine Top, where, if I spend more of the 15 minutes on activity than the opponent does, that leads to a lot of sometimes bad blood. And so here, with the kind of the bonus, I feel like, of the chess clock, I don't feel like this is a
detriment,
a drawback to playing online. I like it that the game can determine, who's spending more time, and if that player goes too far, then that's the way it is. And we see that same thing instigated on Arena now, and I think we didn't at the beginning, but now we do have the clocks on Arena that function the same way.
You just had the rope. Like it's called the rope. It's a Hearthstone reference, where if you took too long to make a play, then you get kicked out. But you didn't have an overall time limit. Now you do. I think in one of the last big events we had it come up, like someone lost because of time, and it makes for awkward viewership, right? Like you're watching, this player is pretty far ahead, and you're like, oh, you think they're going to win, and then all of a sudden they concede, and you're like, wait, what happened? And we have to explain it.
Okay, so that is going to be the end of our third round here today, which is also going to conclude Tannon Grace's contribution to the show. So thanks very much for being here. I appreciate you. It was great to have you, and I thought you had some good stuff to say.
Well, thanks, Joe. I appreciate it. Hopefully it wasn't all that bad.
No, it was great. For viewers at home, we're going to be taking a break, a longer break this round. It's going to be about 15 minutes. We're going to swap in our new commentator before round 4 starts. In the meantime, if you're willing to stick around and wait for us, that'd be great. We're going to show you a legacy match from our championship last December featuring Sam Black. So if you want to watch that during the interim, that'll be great. We'll be back in a few minutes.